Very good afternoon. I was supposed to say good morning, and I was practicing for that. And I also understand that probably we are the only ones between you and lunch. So we'll try to be as crisp and comprehensive as possible. But indeed, it's a pleasure to be here on this panel among such an august gathering. And we'll be discussing about empowering middle managers in this hybrid world. Gartner, conducted a study in 2023 where and this was with all the HR leaders globally, where they realized that most of the HR leaders are prioritizing leadership and management or manager development. Simultaneously, LinkedIn Learning also conducted a survey, and there again the findings were very similar, where they found that the skills that people are looking forward to are more in terms of manager development and how can managers make extraordinary or do extraordinary work. So, this statistics kind of underscores the fact that in this changing environment, the role of the middle management is really becoming very, very critical. When we look at the changing environment, we are obviously talking about the way business is done. We're also talking about the way in which technology is playing a very disruptive role in our lives. And therefore, how do people work and where do they work from becomes very, very critical. And in light of this, it becomes also more important that the middle management, which is dealing with the frontline teams of our organizations, are given due weightage, are recognized for their efforts, and we empower them in such a way that they are able to lead their teams more effectively and more profitably for the organization. So in today's panel, with Vishnu and Gautam today, and both of them are experts in their respective fields, and they'll be sharing with us the insights, and their own experiences in terms of, how to empower the middle management. So without much ado, let me just start with Vishnu. Vishnu, how has the role of middle managers evolved in the context of hybrid workforce? And what unique challenges do they face in fostering team potential?
Thank you, Atul, and first of all, thank you all for having us here. I think it's a great privilege to be interacting with you, Atul and Gautam, first of all, and hybrid work culture is something that, as you rightly said, it's something that we're still trying to adapt and get used to. So let me take some inputs from all of you. How many of you are in a hybrid working mode or culture?
Most of them.
That's a lot of hands. Now, my next question is a more interesting one. How many of you like working in a hybrid work environment or culture? Most of you. So I think there are certain people who are still not pretty comfortable with working in a hybrid environment. Can you also show hands confidently? Okay, so you like offices more than having a hybrid world. So there's always a mix, and I think that's the first challenge, where I think the workforces or people, how do they perceive a work environment is something very important. Some would be comfortable with it, some would be not so comfortable with it, but how do we cater to different needs? So if I have someone who likes to come to work, maybe I want to give him more opportunities to be at work. Whereas somebody who wants more flexibility in life and working from a remote location may be given that opportunity as well. So how can your hybrid solution be customized? Secondly, now hybrid has different versions, right? When I say hybrid, you would have partially work from office, work from home, 100% work from home, your teams which are based at remote locations. How many of you have teams working from different locations? Now, that's another challenge, right? So for a leader or for a manager to manage a workforce which is not at the same place, I cannot meet them frequently. These are some real-time challenges when we talk about connecting with them, developing with them, engaging teams, aligning them to the bigger workforce and culture. And I think I'll come back to the first question now, where how the role of a middle-level manager has evolved. I think it has become way more complex than before. Complexity in terms of how do I derive engagement, how do I connect with my teams, and all those things that we spoke about, there is a lot of effort which is going in there. And let's also understand that our mid-level managers are your values and culture ambassador. In the previous conversation, I think we had some really insightful thoughts about the importance of purpose, values, and culture. And it's not your top management, it's your middle management and your larger workforces who would live that day in and day out. And aligning them would become extremely critical. So there's an extra effort in understanding technology, in understanding teams, that human connect, which has to be more in different ways. So as an individual, I think it's an overall evolution one has to focus on with technology, with people, my leadership skills, my ability to handle teams. There's a lot of effort has to go into my development. Gautam, I'm happy to hear your thoughts and your thoughts on this too.
Absolutely, Vishnu, and I think it's very critical because since the work landscape has changed, but the targets have not gone down for any organization. I mean, they're only going up, right? And therefore, it's all the more important that, how are people managed and motivated. So, just building on what Vishnu said, Gautam, communication is key in case of hybrid workforce, right? So, how do middle managers enhance their communication so as to bridge the gap between people who are in office and who are working in a hybrid kind of a mode?
So I think to give you context, I am a sort of middle manager is how I see myself. My boss is in a different country, from a different culture. My teams are in different countries, different culture. So how we've seen success at MasterCard is you have to first understand that we all are humans, right? There's a number associated to what I'm supposed to achieve, but at the end of the day, we all are humans. We'll have our moments, right? As a middle manager hat on, I would first invest time in knowing the person. So that works best. If you look at MasterCard, we are in almost 200 countries, right? So that means we have 1 or 2 people in every country, which means they are hybrid or remote anyways, right? Understand the person first, understand what triggers them, and then you can work very well with them. Tools, technology, adaptation all comes in later. You have to invest time in knowing them. I spend a lot of time just asking about how is your kid doing, how are you thinking about the future 6 months? Are you taking time off? It's nothing to do with the bad feedback I'm going to give at the end of the call, right? But I have to invest time, otherwise there's no trust built. I was not born with the trust that I would have with my manager. It's built in small moments. When it comes to communication, I would say spend time knowing them, spend time knowing what they will do in 6 months, a year from now. Maybe they will come back, and if you have great teams like mine, they will come back and say, I want to do your job in the next 6 months and make you jobless, which is great. At least they're motivated. They'll go that extra mile. So do the communications part by just spending time building trust. If that piece is done, anything that goes wrong, they will come back to you and tell you upfront that I made this mistake. I've made a blunder, I think 2 weeks back. I made this blunder and I was just kicking myself as to how can I do this after 20 years? How can I miss out on a name after 20 years? That's when my mentor told me, you know what, Gautam, monkeys also fall from the trees, so it's okay. All right. So you need to have that trust that the person will give you something in return which is of value. So that's how I see middle managers, is build trust and keep having that conversation.
Yeah, sure, Gautam. So I picked up 2 things from what you said. One, that your boss should not be in your country, because that's when you get time. And second is that, yes, you need to have a continuous engagement and you need to know your people better. Maybe when the boss is around, probably, does it restrict? Anyway, just kidding,
Maybe.
just kidding. I hope my boss is not listening to me. Okay, so, he spoke about trust, Vishnu. So, there are 2 things. One is performance. And as we discussed that the targets are going up and therefore the performance expectation from the team members is also very, very high. But in a hybrid environment, it's also autonomy and like what, Gautam said, an element of trust. So how do we manage both these things?
I think that's a tricky one. So when we talk about trust, Atul, and I think that's a human nature. It takes time to build trust. It takes years and years of effort to build a connect or a bond, and it takes once instance to break it. So I think what's more important with respect to people managers when it comes to building trust is to be consistent. there has to be a genuine intent towards your people. You cannot be wearing a mask and then talking about their well-being when you really don't mean it. So that genuine intent has to be seen in your communication, has to be seen in your actions, has to be observed in the way you make decisions, and that's a continuous exercise. Building trust is something like relationships. Always work in progress. There is no outcome to it. You cannot say that it's done, dusted. Even after getting married, you're still working on it. That's the beginning of building trust and not the end of it. So I think that's a continuous environment, which means you have to spend time. You have to, as you rightly said, Gautam, learn about your team, their preferences, their mindset, their insecurities. Let's also understand that hybrid environment is also making our people more sensitive, bringing in a lot of insecurities, mental health, holistic well-being. These are questions which are being asked to people, managers, and honestly, they don't know how to deal with it. And that's another skill set which needs to be built. Autonomy is not a problem in hybrid. I think it's a problem everywhere. I know a lot of managers till date struggle to trust their teams when it comes to making decisions. Trust their teams in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing, and which is resulting in another bias, which is a technology-based bias, which means now managers have started building a bias in their mind that if I'm not observing my team member, what he or she may be doing there. Are they sleeping? Are they out for a party? Are they with friends in a coffee shop? So that is a bias that I think all the middle level managers and senior level managers would have to deal with. You have to trust them. And it brings us back to one of my very old formulas of working, which I practice well with my teams, and it works very well for me. The formula is from your basic science, I think before metric. It's called the work done formula. Does anyone know what's the work done formula out here? I know it's been a while. Yeah, and we don't want to go back to school days for sure and give those exams, but anyone who can just call out the work done formula. It is a multiplication of two things. Excellent, well done. I think 100 points to you for that. It's force into displacement. Now, the question is, what is more important, the force or the displacement? So raise hands if you feel force is more important. None of you? Raise hands if you feel displacement is more important. You haven't raised hand on either of the questions. Yeah. So, and that's a big question, right? So, and I can bring it to a context level. So force at workplace means the kind of effort, the amount of energy you're investing in something. Displacement is how much movement are you creating after investing that energy? Now, I can be standing here and pushing that wall the entire day. What's the work done? Zero, right? There is no displacement. So no matter if you've applied 1,000 newtons of force on that wall, displacement is zero, your end result is zero. So autonomy comes where we can measure the outcome of efforts put in by a team, whether it's done in 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, it doesn't matter. The force element has a minimal impact. What is more important is how much displacement they're able to create out of it. And that's how we set goals. That's how we train them or develop them to handle different objectives in task and performance. How, and that's where probably AI will be a tool, while it may also bring in joblessness, it may also enable a lot of people to do a lot of things much faster. So that's the entire idea. You have to trust your teams, you have to deal with that bias, you have to set the right goals which are achievable, which are productive, which are high on performance, train and develop them at the same time, and always remember, it's not the amount of time you spend in front of the system. No, that will not decide how good of a performer you are. It is the output of the time that you have spent either in front of that system or at your operations or at that sales workforce or place, and what is the output you've gotten out of it. So I think that's a mind shift change that people would have to see. I hope I've been able to
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, if you go back, and look at theory X and theory Y, which I'm sure that most of us would have studied in our MBA classes, right? Theory X says that people don't work and they shirk work and they have to be pushed to do work. Theory Y says that people enjoy work as much as they enjoy play. And I think that's a mindset shift which is required, and especially at the middle management level, because the front line, working 12 hours a day may lead to burnout. And we've all seen and gone through the phenomena of the great resignation, when people were leaving, and people were leaving also because of the managers that they were working for. So I think, completely agree with you on that, Vishnu. Gautam, just picking up a thread from what Vishnu said on the mental well-being, right? What do you think can the middle management managers do to really create a healthy work environment which takes care of the mental well-being of the people as well? Nowadays, we hear about a lot of these marathons, like we have the Bombay Marathon coming up now. So physically, I think most of us are pretty up to the mark. But what's going inside, and from the mental well-being perspective. So what's your take on that in terms of what can be done?
So, I see a lot of initiatives already in place in a lot of organizations around, well-being. There are apps, you could do a lot of other things, right? But actually at the end of the day, the tool is as good as the person who's using it, right? You can ask me to download the app, you could ask me to sign up, but I'm not going to do anything with it. I have Thrive, I've never opened it, right? I have a Virgin Pulse app which keeps checking on my steps, and then I'm like, why are you checking on me? So my well-being resides with the relationship that I have with my work colleagues. And I'll have my good days, I'll have my bad days. But in each environment, if my manager is aware of what my mental status is, and then starts putting pressure to achieve something new out of my day, that's where my mental peace lies. That she knows how well I am prepared to take on the new task, or how ill-prepared I am today. So that kind of connect you can only make if you spend time with each other. There's no tool book. I have not seen a tool book. I've seen tool books, but there's no tool book I've seen people use to look at, okay, what's going to be the formula for motivating Gautam today? Let me try this. It doesn't work with people. On a certain day, especially when I'm getting paid, on salary day, my motivation is 300%. A week later, when I'm below the poverty line, it's 80%, It's because of the fact that people get motivated by different things. Some people get motivated by recognition, some people get motivated by the new big thing that they will bring to the team. As middle managers, or as people who will drive culture, they need to know what's triggering each person. Just to give you a nugget, one of our team members today in Tel Aviv, it's a working day for us. They have a HR spa day. For half of the day, they are visiting this beautiful spa in Tel Aviv. And then they will come back to work and finish off their work in the remaining 4 hours in a work marathon environment, which means you prioritize what needs to be done today. All the other emails can wait till tomorrow, right? Now that's their way of doing well-being. My way of doing well-being would be different. So there's no toolkit. I have not seen one being successfully implemented anywhere. Yes, there are toolkits that consultants will sell you for a price, but you've all used those toolkits and we're still here. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of us would be interested in knowing if you have any job opportunities in Tel Aviv, right?
I am looking for one.
No, I think, Vishnu, would you like to just add anything on the well-being part in terms of how do you look at it?
So I think well-being is something big now. When we talk about safety, safety is not just about physical safety, safeguarding people from bullying or harassment, but it's also about keeping them safe in their mental space. We also know for a matter of fact that over a period of time, generations have become more sensitive. I was reading a recent study. I'm sorry I'm not able to quote the reference of where it was and where exactly it was. And it said something like that 70 to 75% of people today have some or the other psychological issue. It may not be as severe as depression, anxiety, or any of those things that we think about the moment we think about psychological situations. But it could be as simple as insecurity. It could be as simple as an anger issue. It could be as simple as an obsessive compulsive disorder. But there is a psychological state that we have to deal with. And empathy would have a very important role in this. And we have to connect with people more. Human beings are social animals. We know that. And hybrid environment will take that thing away from us. That benefit of sitting and having lunch together, coffee together, probably going out on a team meeting together, would not be that easy anymore. But how do I fulfill that psychological need of my teams would be of utmost importance. We also know communication, when it's done through technology, it goes haywires. Yeah? Text messages can be comprehended, misinterpreted in greater ways. A telephonic conversation has more chances of getting misinterpreted compared to a face-to-face conversation. We all know these facts, which means that, and that now it becomes way more difficult for me as a manager to kind of balance so many things, operational targets, and work around it. So a simple way out of it is to build in more human values, and humanity has to take some sort of a precedence out there. If a team member walks up to you and said, "I'm not happy, I'm sad," you take it seriously. You never know what the next level or next step could be. If somebody says, "You know what, I'm going through a tough relationship," do not ignore that. It's something which can actually transform somebody's life in a not so positive way. We need to listen more, we need to understand them more, we need to put in more efforts to bring in that mental peace and well-being in people. So emotions have a role to play, I would say.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I think we all agree on the fact that the way things are changing, the way things are evolving and transforming, the role of middle managers would really go through a major transformation. And as I said earlier, that in the next decade, as that's what the experts say, a lot of effort would go in terms of transforming this role and making them capable of handling the changes that the organizations are facing. So whether it be it in terms of performance, be it in terms of autonomy, be it in terms of trust that we are having in our team members, be it in terms of engagement or mental and physical well-being of our people, I think it's going to be a very interesting and exciting journey as we progress. I think we have enough time to just ask, maybe if the audience have any one or two questions, we can have that. Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you for a wonderful insights, and thank you so much for keeping it humorous as well. Much needed one. So from a middle manager's perspective, if I were a middle manager, things are slightly different for me. If I were a leader, if I were in the top ranking arena, I have strategic meetings, I have things to look out for that are future oriented. And I have my path set for me. And if I were a junior resource and junior executive, I would be looking at building my career, kickstarting it. I have my next few years in mind. But as a middle manager, the chances are that I have questions about what's in it for me, what am I going to do next? And it could be, depending on the organization, it could be the next step in their career, or if they witness top managers being hired from elsewhere and joining the organization, that is that's a scary proposition. So how am I going to grow in the organization, and what's next is the typical question that I have. So how do we tackle that? How do you do that in your organizations?
Yeah. Vishnu?
So I think your question is what's in it for me more than a hybrid environment, and I'm happy to take that question up and see. And I think that's a question that we have to answer at every stage of somebody's career. Whether I'm just joined the organization, where I've been in the middle management, whether I'm in the senior management, even senior management looks forward to what's in it for me, right? So I think that's a question we have to constantly answer for our people, and it's always your line manager's responsibility to create a clear-cut path. It may not always result in progression, it may result in some sort of a skill building, it may result in some sort of an exposure, it may result in some sort of a project or assignment which will eventually take you somewhere. And I think that's the kind of maturity we also have to build in our teams, that after a point in time, the vertical growth will be more stagnant. In an organization of 40,000 people, there would only be one CEO and one CHRO. Probably 20 top level people, which means a lot of managers will be somewhere in the top 20-30% ratio, and that's where stagnancy really happens the most. But that's where your growth is all about: exposure, experience, building new skills, and you also have to decide where you want to be. So more than me answering that question for my team, what's in it for them, they also have to answer it for themselves. What do I want from myself in the next 3, 4, or 5 years? And then as a manager, I think I'll have to facilitate that entire journey, given my thoughts, my point of views. This is where you want to be. This is what I think about it. This is what, and we decide on a plan or a path and work on it together, collaborate for their career. I don't know if I've said too much, but.
No, I think completely agree. And also what I'll just add 2 bits. You don't become a MD or CEO or CXO, directly unless until you're the promoter's child, right? And I hope there are no promoters sitting here. So everybody, and even there, they would prefer their children to actually, grow through the ranks and actually understand what happens on the front line. So there are 2 things. One is that organizations are very consciously looking at creating career paths, working on things like identifying high potential, succession planning, a lot of learning interventions, engagements which are happening, which typically all the progressive organizations are looking at. And the fact that we're discussing about middle management goes to show that that's going to be pivotal in this changing times. Because no matter how good a strategy it is, if it is not executed properly, then everything goes waste. Number 2, as an employee, I think it's also your responsibility to talk to your stakeholders and check with them, what is in it for me, right? If you feel you are stagnating, understand the reason why you are stagnating. In the previous panel, they were discussing about competencies and all. Understand, look at it. Are you in the wrong function, or maybe in the wrong place, right? So it's a two-way, rather, it's a joint effort of the organization and of the individual. But let me tell you one thing very, very clearly. We always look at senior management and top management and say, oh, wow, what a life they're leading. They are actually going through a lot of turmoil and a lot of stress, because the stakes at their level are much, much higher than what they are at your level. So it's the same for everyone. We all have to work hard to earn a living and to earn a name in the society. So always, feel proud of whichever level in the organization you are at. Have that passion and move forward.
And have a stop loss in place. This is what I keep telling my team is, what's your limit of the stop loss? When are you thinking of becoming the top leader at another organization if you're not growing here? If you don't have that clarity for yourself or your team, you'll not be able to support them that much. So ask that clearly. When are you cutting your losses? 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? I have 12 months to work with you to figure out something else. That works. So you ask people that directly, they'll start respecting you at a different level altogether.
I think the time is up, and getting indication that the lunch is ready, probably. I'm sorry, I don't know whether it's lunch or panel. Okay, so thank you so much, Vishnu and Gautam. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to NASScom YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.